I have spoken of orthodoxy coming in like a sword. Here I confess that it came in like a battle axe. For really, when I came to think of it, Christianity is the only thing left that has any real right to question the power of the well nurtured or the well bred. I have listened often enough to Socialists or even to Democrats saying that the physical conditions of the poor must of necessity make them mentally and morally degraded. I have listened to scientific men, and there are still scientific men not opposed to democracy, saying that if we give the poor healthier conditions, vice and wrong will disappear. I have listened to them with a horrible attention, with a hideous fascination; for it was like watching a man energetically sawing from the tree the branch that he is sitting on. If these happy democrats could prove their case, they would strike democracy dead. If the poor are thus utterly demoralized, it may or may not be practical to raise them; but it is certainly quite practical to disfranchise them. If the man with a bad bedroom cannot give a good vote, then the first and swiftest deduction is that he shall give no vote. The governing class may reasonably say, "It may take us some time to reform his bedroom; but if he is the brute you say, it will take him very little time to ruin our country. Therefore we will take your hint, and not give him the chance." It fills me with horrible amusement to observe the way in which the earnest Socialist industriously lays the foundation of all aristocracy, expatiating blandly upon the evident unfitness of the poor to rule. It is like listening to somebody at an evening party apologizing for entering without evening dress, and explaining that he had recently been intoxicated, had a personal habit of taking off his clothes in the street, and had moreover only just changed from prison uniform. At any moment one feels the host might say that really, if it was as bad as all that, he need not come in at all. So it is when the ordinary Socialist with a beaming face proves that the poor, after their smashing experiences, cannot be really trustworthy. At any moment the rich may say, "Very well, then, we won't trust them," and bang the door in his face. On the basis of Mr. Blatchford's view of heredity and environment, the case for the aristocracy is quite overwhelming. If clean homes and clean air make clean souls, why not give the power, for the present at any rate, to those who undoubtedly have the clean air? If better conditions will make the poor more fit to govern themselves, why should not better conditions already make the rich more fit to govern them? On the ordinary environment argument the matter is fairly manifest. The comfortable class must be merely our vanguard in Utopia. Is there any answer to the proposition that those who have had the best opportunities will probably be our best guides? Is there any answer to the argument that those who have breathed clean air had better decide for those who have breathed foul? As far as I know, there is only one answer, and that answer is Christianity. Only the Christian Church can offer any rational objection to a complete confidence in the rich. For she has maintained from the beginning that the danger was not in man's environment, but in man. Further, she has maintained that if we come to talk of a dangerous environment, the most dangerous environment of all is the commodious environment. I know that the most modern manufacture has been really occupied in trying to produce an abnormally large needle. I know that the most recent biologists have been chiefly anxious to discover a very small camel. But if we diminish the camel to his smallest, or open the eye of the needle to its largest, if in short we assume the words of Christ to have meant the very least that they could mean, his words must at the very least mean this: that rich men are not very likely to be morally trustworthy. Christianity, even when watered down, is hot enough to boil all modern society to rags. The mere minimum of the Church would be a deadly ultimatum to the world. For the whole modern world is absolutely based on the assumption, not that the rich are necessary, which is tenable, but that the rich are trustworthy, which for a Christian is not tenable. You will hear everlastingly in all discussions about newspapers, companies, aristocracies, or party politics, this argument that the rich man cannot be bribed. The fact is, of course, that the rich man is bribed. He has been bribed already. That is why he is a rich man. The whole case for Christianity is that a man who is dependent upon the luxuries of this life is a corrupt man, spiritually corrupt, politically corrupt, financially corrupt. There is one thing that Christ and all Christian saints have said with a sort of savage monotony. They have said simply that to be rich is to be in peculiar danger of moral wreck. It is not demonstrably unchristian to kill the rich as violators of definable justice. It is not demonstrably unchristian to crown the rich as convenient rulers of society. It is not certainly unchristian to rebel against the rich or to submit to the rich. But it is quite certainly unchristian to trust the rich, to regard the rich as more morally safe than the poor. A Christian may consistently say, "I respect that man's rank, although he takes bribes." But a Christian cannot say, as all modern men are saying at lunch and breakfast, a man of that rank would not take bribes. For it is a part of Christian dogma that any man in any rank may take bribes. It is a part of Christian dogma. It also happens by a curious coincidence that it is a part of obvious human history. When people say that a man in that position would be incorruptible, there is no need to bring Christianity into the discussion. Was Lord Bacon a bootblack? Was the Duke of Marlborough a crossing sweeper? In the best Utopia I must be prepared for the moral fall of any man in any position at any moment, especially for my fall from my position at this moment. Much vague and sentimental journalism has been poured out to the effect that Christianity is akin to democracy, and most of it is scarcely strong or clear enough to refute the fact that the two things have often quarrelled. The real ground upon which Christianity and democracy are one is very much deeper. The one specially and peculiarly unchristian idea is the idea of Carlyle, the idea that the man should rule who feels that he can rule. Whatever else is Christian, this is heathen. If our faith comments on government at all, its comment must be this, that the man should rule who does not think that he can rule. Carlyle's hero may say, "I will be king," but the Christian saint must say, "Nolo episcopari." If the great paradox of Christianity means anything, it means this, that we must take the crown in our hands and go hunting in dry places and dark corners of the earth until we find the one man who feels himself unfit to wear it. Carlyle was quite wrong. We have not got to crown the exceptional man who knows he can rule; rather we must crown the much more exceptional man who knows he can't. Now this is one of the 2 or 3 vital defences of working democracy. The mere machinery of voting is not democracy, though at present it is not easy to effect any simpler democratic method. But even the machinery of voting is profoundly Christian in this practical sense, that it is an attempt to get at the opinion of those who would be too modest to offer it. It is a mystical adventure. It is specially trusting those who do not trust themselves. That enigma is strictly peculiar to Christendom. There is nothing really humble about the abnegation of the Buddhist. The mild Hindu is mild, but he is not meek. But there is something psychologically Christian about the idea of seeking for the opinion of the obscure rather than taking the obvious course of accepting the opinion of the prominent. To say that voting is peculiarly Christian may seem somewhat curious. To say that canvassing is Christian may seem quite crazy. But canvassing is very Christian in its primary idea. It is encouraging the humble. It is saying to the modest man, "Friend, go up higher." Or if there is some slight defect in canvassing, that is, in its perfect and rounded piety, it is only because it may possibly neglect to encourage the modesty of the canvasser. Aristocracy is not an institution. Aristocracy is a sin, generally a very venial one. It is merely the drift or slide of men into a sort of natural pomposity and praise of the powerful, which is the most easy and obvious affair in the world. It is one of the 100 answers to the fugitive perversion of modern force that the promptest and boldest agencies are also the most fragile or full of sensibility. The swiftest things are the softest things. A bird is active because a bird is soft. A stone is helpless because a stone is hard. The stone must by its own nature go downwards because hardness is weak. The bird can of its nature go upwards because fragility is force. In perfect force there is a kind of frivolity, an airiness that can maintain itself in the air. Modern investigators of miraculous history have solemnly admitted that a characteristic of the great saints is their power of levitation. They might go further. A characteristic of the great saints is their power of levity. Angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. This has been always the instinct of Christendom, and especially the instinct of Christian art. Remember how Fra Angelico represented all his angels not only as birds, but almost as butterflies. Remember how the very earnest medieval art was full of light and fluttering draperies, of quick and capering feet. It was the one thing that the modern Pre-Raphaelites would not imitate in the real Pre-Raphaelites. Burne-Jones could never recover the deep levity of the Middle Ages. In the old Christian pictures the sky over every figure is like a blue or gold parachute. Every figure seems ready to fly up and float about in the heavens. The tattered cloak of the beggar will bear him up like the rayed plumes of the angels. But the kings in their heavy gold, and the proud in their robes of purple, will all of their nature sink downward, for pride cannot rise to levity or levitation. Pride is the downward drag of all things into an easy solemnity. One settles down into a sort of selfish seriousness. But one has to rise to a gay self forgetfulness. A man falls into a brown study; he reaches up at a blue sky. Seriousness is not a virtue. It would be a heresy, but a much more sensible heresy, to say that seriousness is a vice. It is really a natural trend or lapse into taking one's self gravely, because it is the easiest thing to do. It is much easier to write a good Times leading article than a good joke in Punch. For solemnity flows out of men naturally, but laughter is a leap. It is easy to be heavy, hard to be light. Satan fell by the force of gravity.